The flood is coming. What I can share with you, Chris, is that I've got intelligence directly from Northern Triangle countries that these cartels, these waves of illegal immigrants, they aren't just being fueled by the organized crime in that part of the world. They're also being funded by U.S. taxpayers. That's right. U.S. taxpayer money flows through the State Department, through USAID, and that money is ending up in the hands of NGOs that are advertising for and facilitating the caravans and movements of people into our country. It's sad to admit it, but the U.S. government may be one of the biggest human traffickers in the world, because even after we get these folks, the policies of Joe Biden have us just sending them all around the country under a catch and release policy that Donald Trump had reversed with great success.
The failure of every local news entity is a failure of democracy. Sometimes it's just bad news. Sometimes the people who work in local journalism are the ones creating, as what Ms. Graham described, unsubstantiated clickbait. And so we cannot view it that way. Mr. Greenwald, I have some questions for you, and I'll confess at the beginning, though you once said I have, quote, the worst ideology in Congress, I am a ravenous consumer of your content. I find it all very thought-provoking, and I read you on Substack frequently. But I want to go into one of the elements of your testimony where you talked about the potential for the JCPA to create a stratification within media, where you create more distance between the large media conglomerates like, Gannett or News Corp, and then maybe those smaller, more independent sites that are also creating good news. Are you worried that by trying to remedy the monopolies in big tech, we create greater challenges in the monopolies of big media and make it even harder for independent, gritty journalism to survive?
I do worry about that quite a bit, Congressman Gates. We've listened to many people speak quite accurately about the state of the news industry today, and what we're hearing is not a kind of idealized or romanticized picture that we might like to think about of having a diverse and dispersed power throughout the industry where lots of different voices can be heard, but instead a very concentrated industry, very similar, in fact, to Silicon Valley, maybe a few steps behind it, such that if you empower this industry without including enormous numbers of very clear and concrete safeguards to prevent it, you could very well be essentially accelerating some of the worst industry trends, ensuring that, say, hedge funds who control the industries or media giants that exert overwhelming power like the New York Times or digital outlets can further entrench their power through this negotiating force that becomes an antitrust exemption in a way that I'm concerned will exacerbate the problems that the subcommittee is correctly identifying as a problem, but also forestall the longer-term solutions of dealing with Silicon Valley monopolistic power that is at the root of all of these problems.
Yeah, and in that regard, you seem to agree with the fundamental premise laid out by Chairman Cicilline and Ranking Member Buck. I mean, you are one of the founders of The Intercept. As a result of The Intercept not liking some of your criticism of the political left, you had to leave the entity you co-founded. You go to Substack to write, and now even at Substack, there are efforts underway to cancel and censor journalists who are critical of other journalists. And so if the remedy that Mr. Cicilline and Mr. Buck have proposed is not the right one, what insight would you offer in order to get at the core problem?
The concern I have is that the discussion in the legislation seems grounded in a premise that the only or the primary problem of both local and national journalism is that Google and Facebook are vacuuming up advertising revenue, and if that you simply fix that problem, the problem of media failure will be rectified as well. And I don't think that's true. I think there's reasons why consumers have turned away from journalism. I'm concerned that legislation like this can prevent the self-examination of why journalism has failed so many people, why people no longer trust it and put their faith in it. And I do absolutely believe that the problem of Silicon Valley monopolistic power and its ability to interfere in our politics and to impede a free press is a very serious one. But oftentimes it's the media itself, it's journalists themselves who are demanding that that power be exercised in a censorious way that undermines a free and diverse press. And that's why I think that until the problem that this subcommittee identified in that report is addressed head on, which is breaking up the monopoly powers of this industry, none of these problems will really be fixed. And oftentimes these piecemeal solutions can make them much worse by empowering an industry that's causing many of them in the first place.
Thank you for that thoughtful feedback. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I'll submit my additional questions to the witnesses for the record, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Gazvia. I just want to make a quick point here, if it's okay. I do think that people should